What's going on, folks? Welcome into a brand new episode of a live edition of the Tighten Up Talk. I am Trey Wynn, Blake Shoemaker, no longer the artist formerly known as COVID Blake, and our
Yes,
guy,
sir.
Mike Ianniello of the Competition Problem. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on here, guys.
Good. Blake, how are you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Good to be back at work, even in a pharmacy. And this year, it's awesome to be back and able to do anything, little things like go to the grocery store, or yell at traffic, or anything.
Yeah, a little normalcy, man. I keep saying it every week. It's like the more that we can get back, and hopefully we don't have to give anything back up and cases and all this different stuff. We'll get to that stuff. But folks, obviously, welcome in. We're gonna be here for a little while talking some Tennessee Titans. Mike, obviously decked out in his Packers hat. He is here as a fan. We'll have the hat come on, have the hat come off as a fan, and get your opinion on obviously the Titans win over the Lions. And for those that do not know, we do want to make sure and give the Competition Problem a shout out for all those that are interested into the sports betting world. Wherever you listen to podcasts, go search for the Competition Problem. Ben Bobick, Mike Ianniello. And Mike, I want to ask you, brother, tell us a little bit about what the Competition Problem is all about, and even give us a little title into the hint into the title, if you'll tell that story for us.
Yeah. So, Competition Problem. We just started a couple weeks ago. For those of you who don't know, Ben Bobick, he is my co-host. He actually was on Tighten Up Talk a couple weeks ago, I believe, breaking down the Steelers with you guys. So me and Ben have known each other since college. He's one of my best friends. We went to Penn State together, and we pretty much do the podcast every week where we discuss picks. I was actually like his bookie before betting obviously became legal in Tennessee. I'm from Pennsylvania. It's legal here. He's from Pittsburgh originally. So he created an account one day when he was home, and then he would just text me his picks and I would log into his account. And there's a couple of times where I'd be trying to remember whose account I was logged into. And there was one I bet, I forget who it was. I bet the wrong team. I bet on his account by accident instead of mine. I was like, hey, I just bet this. He's like, I like it. Keep it in there. So we always discuss picks. I'm big into college football. So a lot of times I'll make the college football cards, and then we kind of work together on the NFL and stuff. And we hash out the picks together and have some fun. Gambling is way more fun when you have someone riding with you. If you lose a heartbreaker and you're just alone in your own misery, it sucks. But when you can text a buddy and be like, I can't believe we just lost that game, it eases the pain a little bit. So that's kind of what the competition is. It's just two buddies who love gambling and talk about the picks. And we hope that as we continue to grow, that's kind of what we want to build as a community. Obviously, you guys are based in Chattanooga, so hopefully it kind of grows down there and can up here, and we just have this whole community of gamblers that I know Blake will text me like, buddy, Ole Miss, come on. It just makes it more fun when you're like, hey.
True story.
He did. Yeah. And I maintain that was the correct pick. They had an 89% win expectancy after the game. They should win that game 9 out of 10 times. We picked.
Oh, gotta explain himself to get out of that one. No, there's definitely been times I know Chase and I both, as far as the newly legal to Tennessee, obviously sports betting is just taken off and everyone's in the conversation. But yeah, Mike and Ben do a fantastic job. So make sure and search again wherever you are listening to podcasts. It is wherever you are. Hook up, and of course, to make sure that you know who we are, this is a part of the Chat 10 Sports Podcast Network. As if you're a Vols fan, obviously Tennessee Titans, Predators, and Hittin' Dingers, our Atlanta Braves podcast. Make sure you can search Chat 10 Sports anywhere that you listen and subscribe today. But guys, let's get into it right now, because the Tennessee Titans, we asked the question last week, can they take care of business? And obviously, like we said, this week is kind of the building and the crescendo of obviously the Packers. Packers being the 1 seed or the 2 seed right now, Mike? Which one was it?
1 seed.
1 seed, yeah. So they're obviously the top. They're the top of the cream of the crop in the NFC. Obviously, we're looking at a steadily falling. Shout out to Ben Bobick. The Steelers losing another one. Very surprising to see it. Obviously, we can stop and chew on that one for a second if you want to. But as the Titans line up and they come up against the Lions, and Stafford was playing, as we did discuss, both out, Chase Daniels and obviously Stafford going. But guys, what was so many storylines, but what was the biggest thing that stuck out to you as the Titans dismantled the Detroit Lions?
I think it was great to have a second game in a row where the Titans came into a situation where they were in a situation where they obviously needed to win and win big just based on talent and based on paper, and they delivered. It wasn't an early in the season thing where we barely scraped by the Jags. That happened early, but late we blew them out. There are a lot of games early that had they tipped just ever so slightly, the bounce of the ball go a little bit differently. We could be, on the outside looking in at this point. So I think the Titans are starting to peak at the right time. Tannehill still going strong, having an amazing season. Derrick Henry doing what Derrick Henry does. And now I think the big story coming out of this past weekend is the defense starting to get a little more healthy, having Adoree Jackson back out there, having Fulton, coming back and starting to kind of mesh this together. So finally starting to get some of these people back from injury at the right time. And obviously the defense still has some issues. And I think it's just going to take some time to knock off some of that rust. And we'll get into some of the numbers a little bit later as we get closer to the end as we talk about other topics. But I was pretty impressed by what the Titans did on offense, kind of taking that template from the Chiefs last year. They had a defense that wasn't great, but they didn't care because they had an offense that could outscore what the defense gave up. And I'm seeing that a lot out of this team, especially as the season goes on.
Yeah, Mike, what'd you think, man?
Yeah, I think it's the Titans they're very consistent, which is good. I feel like is you kind of always know what you're going to get from the Titans, and is it always good enough to win? Not necessarily, but you know what you're going to get. And I think we even talked about this on the competition problem. Is I said this to Ben. I feel like every year, as the weather gets colder, Derrick Henry gets hotter. And that's a scary, scary thought. We'll get into kind of Packers specific, but I'm very nervous about Derrick Henry. He's a problem. But I think too, like it's more their offenses. They've always been last year. They were very much Derrick Henry. He run the ball 40 times a game. Vrabel used to wear the hat, was it the mask or the hat that he said that just said run the ball, give the ball to Derrick Henry. But I think you're seeing their passing game is becoming way more dangerous, I feel like, than they get credit for. Corey Davis, I think, is one of the more underrated receivers in football. Obviously, A.J. Brown is this his second year or third year?
A.J. Brown's second year right now.
Second year, and I mean, he's just become a freak. So I do think it helps them that they don't need to rely on Henry, and I think that'll only make Henry more effective. Is if you run the ball, if teams try to stop Henry, they can just kill you with their receivers.
Right. Yeah, one thing I know, obviously, we've talked about Jonnu Smith having gone, not MIA, but obviously having to contribute with the running game with Lawan being out this week. I mean, it's the Lions. I know it's not a win over the Packers or an NFC leading team. It was another sound win that we're obviously hoping it's better with as time goes on, right? I loved every second of the game. It was one of those games that if you're hanging out with people or if you're actually there, you're not necessarily sweating it and having to pay attention over the game, which is always nice. But I mean, I was impressed. I know prior to the game, a lot of conversations kicking up as far as the amount of yards that the Lions can put up. And they showed themselves able to put it out from the very first drive, which at first I'm thinking, okay, what are we really – and what was that defense going to be? How was Adoree Jackson going to be back coming off the bench? Obviously, Darrington Evans, man. I might have a man crush here because I love what he brings to the offense. He showed himself not only just effective, but I mean on 13 snaps, guys, he basically took the reins and saying – basically to the defense of the Lions saying, you still have to account for me, even if Big Henry's on the bench, or if he's in a different, a line spot. So, yeah, like Mike said, the danger in the complexity of the offense, and when that play action is working, and when Henry's working, and even the conversation that we could have about Derrick Henry and 2,000 yards, they might just find themselves in that role, in that position with the Packers. I think they're giving up 110 a game on average. And then obviously the Texans, I think they're the worst defense in the league, or one of the worst run defenses in the league, giving up probably 100. And Blake, you might check me on this here shortly, but 150 something. So all that to say, Darrington Evans was that one thing I've been wanting to see for a long, long time. And finally we have it where it's, okay, Henry could be effective in the first half, and then he could sit, rest, and obviously still have some of the same requirement from the defense to account for the running game. But was it anything as far as obviously still no sacks, still limited quarterback pressures. I think there was a couple plays that Stafford got the ball off and maybe had contact. But in case you are watching with us, we do want to ask you too, what stood out and what was the best part of the Titans win 46-25 over the Lions? But guys, what else do you think on the game? What does this win do for a team like the Titans? And then obviously, what does it do for the overall playoff landscape right now?
Well, let's take a look at the playoff odds. The playoff odds right now, as of this moment, Titans have a 98% chance of ending up in the playoffs in some way, shape, or form. So you're feeling really good about that. Divisional chance is still sitting at 60% because we are still holding that tiebreaker with an even overall record with the Indianapolis Colts. The playoff scenarios for this weekend, very, very simple. You win and you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Love being able to control your destiny. But if we can't pull off the win on the road at Lambeau, you still get in with a Miami loss to Las Vegas or a Baltimore loss to the New York Giants. So you're sitting in a very good position where it seems like a month ago we were sitting here, woe is me, basically making our arguments as to how the Titans were going to, learn from this and do it again next year. Yeah. So that's great. Tannehill's still putting up big numbers, 3,482 yards on the year now. So he's only 89 yards away from the Titans era passing record of Matt Hasselbeck. That's seventh in yardage all time in a single season for the Titans Oilers as a whole. So we're moving towards that top 5 very quickly. The thing that stunned me, Tannehill has 5 total touchdowns between throwing and running. First Titans player with 5 total touchdowns in a game since, anybody want to take a guess?
5 total. I would say, Vince Young or Steve McNair.
Try Billy Volek.
You're kidding me.
I am not. 16 years ago against the Raiders, had a 5 total touchdown game.
Wow.
Blew my mind. But 31 touchdowns on the year. That moves him into the top 3 as far as a single season record, Titans, Oilers. George Blanda still number 1 with 36. Warren Moon with 33 in the 1990 season. So 2 more games, 5 more touchdowns to get to tie the all-time franchise record. Pretty awesome. Henry, we're still talking Henry 2000 drive. He's going to have to average just over 160 yards a game in these last 2 games. Tall order, but if anybody could do it, Derrick Henry could do it. Yeah. An interesting thing I'm watching for this weekend, Derrick Henry, he has 100 yards in 9 consecutive road games. If he were to somehow get to 10, he would tie Barry Sanders for the all-time NFL record. Wow. which would be great. So your stars are peaking at the right time, throwing up the stats. Corey Davis up to 945 receiving yards on the year. Brown at 881. Yes. Very good chance to have 2 1,000-yard receivers for the first time since 2004. Been a long time since we've seen that.
Drew? You said Drew Bennett. This was last week, I think he said. Mm-hmm. Who was it? Drew Bennett and who else?
Derek Mason.
What a tag team. And here's the thing, man. Corey Davis's story this year, obviously last week the big story of what was it, Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football was Marcus Mariota, and everybody kind of started saying, oh, man, did we make a mistake? Obviously he's healthy, and we all know when Marcus is healthy, there's always the spark. There's always the chance that he could do something special, right? And obviously he proved to be what we knew him to be, as here's a pick that's going to eventually cut your legs out from underneath you. I don't mean to be long-winded in bashing Mariota, but it's like Andy Bernard said in The Office, in the final season of I wish you could know when you were in the good old days before you looked back thinking that they were in the good old days. Titans fans need to be thinking, football gods, thank you for this team, for Derrick Henry. Obviously, the credit goes to John Robinson, Mike Vrabel. I know it's exciting to have Mike here to preview the Packers and kind of keep it a non-homerism type Titans show, because we are a good team, but there's a lot of really good teams in this league right now. And I do want to talk about the Steelers and obviously the AFC kind of picture right now. Are the Steelers pretenders? I just want to ask that question, not in a biased way, but obviously falling to the Bengals, it makes me feel better as a Titans fan having lost to the Bengals and thinking wasn't a complete embarrassment. But what do you think, Mike?
So I don't think they're pretenders. So they're in a weird spot where I think you can kind of look at each game almost on its own and think like, okay, losing to the Bills is justifiable. The Bills are very, very good. Then you have the Washington game was right after the debacle with the Ravens, where they basically were on short rest, didn't even know when they were going to play the game. I think they ended up playing on Wednesday. So that whole thing was kind of that was a really tough 2 weeks for them. keep in mind that they basically didn't have a bye week, so they're definitely running out of steam. Their whole defense is hurt. So I think, and then the Bengals game too is just a spot where historically Tomlin has always been awful. If you look going back to the gambling aspect, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like 2-11 against the spread as double-digit favorites on the road. Like that is a spot. Even this earlier in the year against the Cowboys, they gave up almost 350 passing yards to Garrett Gilbert when they played the Cowboys. That is a spot that the Steelers always struggle. Like Ben knew it. You ask any Steelers fan, they lay an egg when they're huge favorites on the road to bad teams. They do it every single year. So I think you can look at it as almost three separate entities that all just broke against them. That being said, Ben is definitely slowing down quickly. He's old. Ben Roethlisberger makes me nervous. Their defense is legit, but they're all hurt. Their whole secondary is banged up. I mean, I texted Ben during the game yesterday. I'm like, Marcus Allen, who played safety at Penn State and was a great safety. I'm like, is Marcus Allen playing inside linebacker? And Ben's like, yeah, he's been our starting inside linebacker the last 2 games. Like that's where our defense is at.
What's his height and weight right now?
He's like 6'2". He's a little bigger, but he's like 6'2", maybe 2 something. But I mean, he played safety. He's number 27. I'm like, I'm like, is that Marcus Allen playing inside backer? And he's like, yeah, that's where our defense is out. So they are hurt. Ben's slowing down. I wouldn't say they're pretenders. I would say they're a clearly not the elite AFC team we thought they were possibly. Like they're not on the same planet as the Chiefs or even the Bills. Like to me, they're in that Titans Colts range where on a good day at their best, they'll win, and at their worst, they won't. So that's kind of where I feel like they are. I don't think the sky's falling as much as maybe some people think. I also think for your guys' perspective, does it make you a little nervous that the Colts play the Steelers, who are kind of free falling, and then the Jaguars, who kind of look like you're going to get 2 wins in a row from the Colts, very realistically, where you guys have to play the Packers?
Yeah. What do you think, Blake?
Oh, that sounds familiar. It's almost like I said that exact same thing last week that people got mad at me about. Honestly, looking at what the Steelers are doing here lately, I understand they've got a lot going on right now, but I don't think it's outlandish to say that there's no team that we would rather be playing in the first round of the playoffs than Pittsburgh right now. They are absolutely reeling and losing game. Now, granted, we lost to the Bengals earlier this year, but at least at that point they had Joe Burrow. There's a lot going on. I guess as Titans fans, realistically, right now we're hoping that they'll take this as a wake-up call and they'll shake things up and have a really good week of practice and go back home to host the Colts and use it as an opportunity to take out some of that anger. That's the only thing we're hanging our hat on right now, because just like you said, Mike, our biggest fear right now is the most likely thing to happen this weekend would be for us to lose to the Packers and for the Steelers to lose to the Colts, at least based on what we've seen in these past few weeks. So great to get into the playoffs, but kind of a shaky prospect, as we discussed last week. If you fall out of that top 4 seed because of the tiebreaker that Cleveland holds over Tennessee, I mean, you're looking at a very inhospitable road game, either at Buffalo or at Pittsburgh, where you really would love to have a home game where the conditions are a little more what you're used to.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, I mean, the only real way that we get a home game is through a wild card, and if another, lower seed upsets a higher seed, which the thing is, and Mike brings up a really good point, the Titans are on a very slippery slope because this thing can go south quick, especially how competitive it is with the Raiders, Dolphins, like you mentioned, the Colts, being right there to nip on the heels of the Titans. And I'm thinking, I mean, the dream can become a nightmare as they, it's a cliche, and I'm not a believer in controlling your own destiny, because you can't control your own destiny whenever you want to. I mean, last year it's control your own destiny against the Chiefs, and they, due to a lack of talent or tackling, it just did not go our way that day, and all that to say, I am slightly concerned because there is so much riding on this game, but at the same time, I'm kind of balanced out for the first time in a long time where we actually have a coaching staff that can make sense of the preparation process. And like Mike said about the Steelers being so thin at linebacker, utilizing a DB, like here we are at outside linebacker, and it's like, well, we're basically out of practice squad players, so anybody want to go? It's like just taking open. What is it? Vince Papale going to show up from the Eagles team that's with Mark Wahlberg? I mean, that's the name of the game in the NFL right now, especially in 2020. But the more I look at our schedule, and especially how hot the Packers are right now, which we can kind of transition into our little hot topic debate here of who is better right now in 2020. Not discussing career-wise. Obviously, want to make that clear. Let's open this thing up, Mike. What do you think? I mean, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is in the conversation to be one of the greatest of all time, especially just raw quarterback talent, his ability, and for all those watching here with us, jump in and show and throw your comment in the chat below. Who is better right now? Obviously, stats aside, who do you rather, or who would you rather have behind center, Tannehill or Rodgers?
I think it is a ridiculous question, and I say that totally unbiased, not Aaron Rodgers, sure. And let me be clear, and I know this is something that I've actually been saying for 2 years. I said this all last season. I actually got in a huge fight with my brother earlier in the year. We were debating different quarterbacks. I love Ryan Tannehill. I think he is starting recently to get more credit he deserved. But even last year, there was this narrative that it was Derrick Henry's team and Ryan Tannehill was just a game manager. And I hate that term. Ryan Tannehill's an awesome quarterback. Mm-hmm. And even what Blake was saying earlier about he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. That's mm-hmm. another thing that he did. People forget Ryan Tannehill was a wide receiver at Texas A&M to start his career. That's a Division I SEC wide receiver. He doesn't mm-hmm. get enough credit for how athletic he is. I've said at the start of the season, even before this year started, I listed Tannehill as the top 10 receiver or quarterback in the NFL. And my brother was like, "You're an insane person." I'm like, "No, he is. He's awesome." Mm-hmm. That being said, Aaron Rodgers is a top 2 quarterback in the NFL this year. It's between him and Mahomes for the MVP. And he's just playing out of his mind. I do think, if you look so Rodgers, in my opinion, obviously, take that as you will as I wear my Packers hat. I think Rodgers should win the MVP this year. His numbers in Mahomes are you can kind of break them all down, whatever. But I always say, Mahomes, Rodgers has Devontae, but that's kind of it. Or mm-hmm. Mahomes is throwing to Tyreek Hill and Travis. Tyreek Hill's usually 40 yards open. He's just faster than everyone on the planet. And Travis Kelce's a beast. Rodgers has 40 touchdowns and 4 interceptions this year through what's been 15 games.
Yeah, 15 games.
So in Rodgers' MVP season in 2014, he threw 38 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So he's already thrown more touchdowns than his second MVP. And then his first MVP was his 45 touchdown year, which he's got 40. He's got 2 games left. So he probably ties that, or if he goes really off, can pass it. And he threw 6 picks that year. So you can argue he's having the best year of his career. And I definitely think Aaron Rodgers is the type of player who took this offseason and the draft super personally. Mm-hmm. It's something I said all summer, leading up to the year, as everyone asked me, "Oh, what do you think the Packers are going to do this year?" And I thought it was kind of a joke that the Packers, their preseason win total was set at 9, which I hammered because I thought that was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. They have already eclipsed that fairly easily. And I think there was this narrative that the Packers went 13-3 last year. They were in the NFC Championship game. And I get it. I was madder than anyone they didn't draft a wide receiver and didn't get Rodgers more help. So if you want to say the Packers didn't get better this offseason, I can agree with that. But they didn't get worse, and everyone acted like this 13-win team was all of a sudden going to be an 8-win team. And I don't understand it. And I think Rodgers took it personally. And I said all year he's going to go on his FU tour, and you're seeing it. He's got 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's got more rushing touchdowns this year than he's had in the past 3 years combined. I think Rodgers is in a different planet right now, and I love Ryan Tannehill, and I'm very happy he's getting the recognition he deserves. But if you'd rather have Ryan Tannehill as your starting quarterback, I think you're a crazy person.
Let's throw some comments up here. Wanted to say hello to Corey Lester, our guy. He's saying Rodgers not even close, and then saying, especially in the playoffs, sorry, Trey. You will hear my response, but Blake Shoemaker, I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to go first. I'm not going to echo everything you're saying, but I have a feeling that we might be on the same page with this. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to make an argument. If you have the two, who would you rather be calling the shots behind the line at quarterback? It would be ridiculous to say, oh, I will definitely make a case that Tannehill is better than Rodgers. I can't make a case that Tannehill is better than Rodgers, but I can make a case that he is having a season that is on par, at least, with what Rodgers is doing. I don't think it's ridiculous to say he's in the same plateau of quarterback play. I think he's doing better here's a guy, Aaron, you talk about the Aaron Rodgers FU tour. Here's a guy who had a great season last year, and all of the media reception after the year was, oh, it was a flash in the pan. Oh, he had one good year. Oh, whatever. And then they signed him to the big contract, and everyone's like, what a terrible decision by the Titans. You should have given the big contract to your franchise running back. You should have done this. You should have done that. And here's Ryan Tannehill, not saying one word about it, going out and is on par to have an even better season than he had last year. You're looking at, when you look at the two and you compare the stats, they're obviously Rodgers is going to be better in a lot of categories, but Tannehill's not that far off. A completion percentage for Rodgers of 69. Ryan Tannehill is 66. Touchdowns, Aaron Rodgers has 40. Ryan Tannehill has 31. Passer rating for the year, Aaron Rodgers at 118 versus 110 for Tannehill. Yards per attempt, 8 for Aaron Rodgers, 8.1 for Tannehill. And when you even break it down to net yards gained per pass attempt, 7.41 yards for Rodgers versus 7.42 for Tannehill. I mean, there are a lot of things that are right there close where you could say that I don't think he's as far off or as far apart as people like to make it sound, because granted, Rodgers has a much longer history and a much more consistent career and much more accolades. But this is a young team, and Tannehill is not on the downhill. I feel that he's moving into the best years of his career. Where that takes him, I don't know. But I'm very happy to have him calling shots for us. If I'm having to pick one of the two, Rodgers, but I don't think Tannehill's as far off as people like to say.
And that's something I don't want to act like we duped everybody. That's why we asked this question. But that is a part of this conversation where it is Ryan Tannehill. It's the system. I mean, obviously him and Derrick Henry. I wouldn't be shocked if Tannehill was blowing up John Robinson and Vrabel this offseason. Make sure Derrick Henry is signed. Whatever we got to do. We got to move money around and backload my contract and make sure that he gets paid, right? Which I think is great. I think even guys like Corey Davis, Blake, we've talked about it as far as them entering into this, free agent period. Does the appeal of a solid, stable situation, can in certain situations it outweigh a couple extra, Brinks trucks visits or whatever you want to, whatever you want to say. But without question, head to head, Rodgers by far. I mean, obviously the history with him, just his raw natural ability, and like Mike said, Tannehill being a receiver out of college and especially developing in a Gase-led offense in Miami and still finding a fourth-round value after all those years. Obviously the injuries, but again, right now, and I agree, Blake, 100%. Tannehill, and I know for the Titans and Oilers franchise history, he's already in third place, I believe, with George Blanda and Warren Moon as far as obviously yardage. But I think Tannehill is playing great. Obviously, between the two guys, the stats that Blake put out, very much, he's playing high quality. And this is not something like folks were saying last season in the AFC Championship or in the AFC playoffs last year of this is a Derrick Henry fluke and flash in the pan. And I just want to echo that because I think Titans fans especially are still having to get accustomed to being a really good team. And I want to ask you guys this because obviously a 46-25 win over the Lions does ring kind of echo of the Bills 42-16 win. And obviously the hype train for old Bills Mafia is chugging right along. Are the Bills the hottest team in the AFC right now, or are the Chiefs still just basically, or how much are they pulling out if they are leading?
I definitely think it's the Bills. I think that, again, I do kind of tend to lean to the gambling aspect. not just are the Bills winning, but they're blowing teams out for the most part, and they're covering the spread. I mean, I'll look it up as I'm talking, but like I know they covered against Denver. I know they obviously covered against the Steelers. I think they were underdogs against the Steelers. Where the Chiefs, and I say this as someone who bet the Chiefs on Sunday, they beat the Saints by 3, and Drew Brees was pretty bad the whole first half. They didn't cover against the Dolphins. They should have beat the Dolphins by way more. They almost lost to the Raiders the week before, I believe. So the Chiefs, I mean, they're winning because they're so much more talented than everyone they play. I mean, their offense is absurd that they don't need to be clicking on all cylinders to beat teams. They just need to kind of hang around, and then Mahomes makes one sick throw and they're winning. Whereas the Bills, to me, when I watch the Bills, they definitely come off more as everything's clicking. Like Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, like everything with them seems to be working, and they seem to be kind of, the Bills have covered the spread 1, 2, 3 in their last 5 games, at least. Where the Chiefs, I know, I don't think they've covered I think the Chiefs haven't covered in 8 straight games, or it's like some ridiculous stretch. So that's Vegas saying, hey, you should win by this much, and they're not doing it. Whereas the Bills should win by this much, and they're blowing that out of the water. So they're playing better than expected. The Chiefs are playing worse than expected. So if there's a team in the NFL I don't want to play right now, it's the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking league-wide, not just the AFC.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. I mean, and here's the thing. I know the video of the weekend, this last weekend, and Blake, I want to get your thoughts too, so just hang tight for 1 second. But the video of Josh Allen coming back to Buffalo and wherever this was, whatever airport, obviously folks piled on top of each other. A lot of COVID-related concerns there, which probably nobody in the Bills Mafia cared about. But all that to say, no, I mean, obviously the hype is real. And I know a lot of people were saying that the Bills Mafia – this is a real fan base, and I'm thinking they're definitely one of the best out there. I think Chiefs fans could be up there, even Phillies fans, as bad as they've been for so long. I'm sure up there, Mike, how it is. But but no, I mean it's just something to me that a team like the Bills, it's all about getting hot at the right time. I think the Titans are right there, but it's just a matter of pushing out. And obviously the AFC South, as much as we would love to say it's a dumpster fire now, we got some bad teams, but it's always going to be the Colts, Titans. It's always going to be right there neck and neck. But Blake, what do you think, man, as far as everything leading into this weekend for the Titans?
So it's the Bills. What a story. I mean, they are one freak last-minute catch away from winning 8 games in a row. They lost that game against the Cardinals in the most spectacular of fashions with that last-second catch. They are the team in the AFC that nobody wants to face right now for the same reasons that Mike talked about. Kansas City, I don't know what the deal is. It doesn't fit. People are telling me that this is a better Kansas City team than the team last year. Based on what? I don't agree with that at all. I see Kansas City just kind of messing around and not really being in much danger of losing the game, but they're underperforming. They're not meeting expectations. And I don't know if that's just them sandbagging right now. I don't know what the deal is, but it certainly doesn't feel – I have no idea how they're sitting there as a 1 seed, honestly. But they're taking care of business. It may not be pretty. The defense still has the issues they had last year. But they're still getting the job done. But the Bills are the team that I feel like everybody needs to look out for, especially if the road goes through Buffalo with the temperatures and the snow and whatever you may be dealing with in Buffalo. But I would agree that right now the hottest team in the AFC would be the Buffalo Bills, and the last team that we would want to see, even with the win over them earlier this year.
So let me ask you guys this, and Mike, give us your thoughts. Like, how should Titans fans feel? And I don't want to overlook the Packers and the Texans, but obviously if they had to match up today, how do you guys think that they would do? Would it be close to what we saw 42-16 on what was it, that Thursday night football matchup?
The Colts Packers, you mean?
No, I'm saying when the Titans beat the Bills 42-16. Was that a Thursday night, Blake? Was that right?
That was the Tuesday night game.
Tuesday night game, that's right. That was after the whole COVID episode.
Yeah, that was a weird game too. I was the one where I bet the Titans thinking that they haven't practiced in forever.
Yeah.
So I do think the Titans. It's a tough one who they match up with better because I think they both would present similar problems to the Titans, where the Titans struggle with teams going over the top on them, which I think both the Bills and Chiefs have the ability to do probably better than most teams. So I do think they'd both be really tough matchups for the Titans, but like I said, I wouldn't want to play the Bills right now. I think the Chiefs are maybe more. I think the Chiefs defense really is not that good. So I feel like I think I trust the Titans against the Chiefs, honestly, more than the Bills.
But how do you think it would go if the Titans and the Bills matched up today?
Titans and the Bills?
Mm-hmm.
It'd probably be high scoring. I don't know. I'd have to dig into the Bills numbers more, but it'd be a good game. I think it'd probably depend on, I mean, I'd probably pick the Bills just again. I just like how they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Titans, the Bills' run game's been kind of disappeared, which I think will maybe hurt them as the playoffs go on. Is Josh Allen as awesome as he's been? He's probably got to win Most Improved Player. I mean, his accuracy this year has been unbelievable.
Yeah,
he's still young, so when it turns to playoff football, I do think I got to see it first to believe it. I mean, they beat Houston in the playoffs last year, correct?
They did, I believe. Well,
I know they.
Yes, because the Chiefs played the Houston Texans, and the Texans were up by 24.
Yeah,
Chiefs came back, and then the following week the Texans lost, just to kind of put the stinker on the old Bill O'Brien saga.
So, but I remember that game being close at the end, and it was kind of a fluky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Allen played great, if I remember correctly. So I do think the Titans have the experience. They beat the Ravens, which, by the way, again, was another one that everyone kind of called the fluke. Go back to that. The Titans would smoke the Ravens if they played them again.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Ravens are way worse than they were last year, and the Titans are better than they were last year. Bills-Titans would be a very good game. I think that's one of those ones where if you play each game 10 times, they probably each win 5. So it's kind of just who's going to get hot that day and make a play, and you're going to have one missed tackle is going to be the difference in that game.
The thing about, I mean, all these high, you said over the top offenses, like the Bills and the Chiefs, and how much of the offenses, and the Packers as well. Obviously, Aaron Jones. I mean, you guys have a sound running offense, but I just don't think anybody has what the Titans have, and that's why I think Darrington Evans. And not to sound like I'm selling the Titans, like they are the best team in the league or even in the AFC. I just think that, offensively speaking, as hot as the Bills are right now, I think you could say a lot of the same things for the Titans. And even as Adoree comes back, I mean, I don't want it to sound like, well, the Titans are going to beat anybody, because I don't believe that. And I do want to get into the preview here with the Packers. I mean, this could be, depending on how it goes, whoever loses this matchup this weekend, we could see in a Super Bowl rematch potentially if the stars align a certain way. Not to knock on wood and not to jinx anybody, but just thinking through. I mean, the Titans are getting hot, and the defense did have a good game. I want to see some sacks. I want to see quarterback pressures, but let's talk some of the Sunday Night Football matchup this weekend. Obviously. Both hot offenses, and the Matt LaFleur, obviously, storyline's always going to be overhyped and always played up like he was here for a decade and did so much for the Titans. But obviously, he's calling good games. But what do you guys think? Blake, I'll start with you, brother. What are your thoughts going into this game against the Packers?
So the first thing I want to say is I'm tired of looking at social media, even our own social media, and seeing everybody mark it down as a loss already, as though the game has already been played, as though it's going to be a blowout, as though we don't have a prayer in this game. Any given Sunday, I mean, first off. And secondly, the team is starting to get good at the right time. We've seen some really good things over these past 2 weeks as the schedule goes on. Now, granted, it's been against the Jags, and granted, it's been against the Lions, but we're seeing an offense that can overcome some of the poor defense we've seen so far. The Packers have put together some good performances too. Some things I kind of noticed in the notes from this past week. Packers kind of had an ugly win against the Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater out there trying, doing his best. But Teddy Bridgewater managed to complete 8 passes of 15 or more yards against the secondary. So Ryan Tannehill, Teddy Bridgewater, so I think the downfield shots are going to be there. And, you've got to keep the Titans finally have a true dual threat offense. You can't just stack the line against Derrick Henry because you have Marcus Mariota throwing the ball or whoever throwing the ball. You've got somebody who can hit the deep ball and fit it into a window consistently, not just a flash in the pan. But that said, Green Bay's run defense has been great. They didn't allow a carry of more than 12 yards the whole game last week. Granted, C-Mac was not out there. But still, to basically limit a team in an entire game to not getting a carry of more than 12 yards. Great. I think the thing with the Packers is that they're two high-powered offenses, but the Packers seem to have a propensity to fall into these lulls on offense. And that was in this past game too. Mike, I think you would agree with me on this. They had 5 straight drives, no points at all, until they finally kind of scratch out a field goal late in the game. And 25 drops on the year, which is second highest in the league. So there are opportunities where those missed opportunities could pay dividends if the Titans were to take advantage. Can they consistently take advantage? I don't know. I think this game with the matchup that we're going to see has the potential to be one of the best games of the year. I mean, late December, Lambeau Field. I haven't looked at the forecast. I'm hoping for classic Lambeau football because that is Derrick Henry weather. Nobody's going to want to try to tackle this guy in the blistering cold. And everybody
28 degrees, 15-mile-an-hour winds.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right, let's go. I'm down with that. The defense, though, for the Titans, it's what everybody points out and how well Adoree Jackson was back this week. And you were still giving up a whole bunch of third down plays. True. But let's break it down for just a minute. Adoree Jackson only played 27 snaps out of 65 in his return.
Really?
27 out of 65. So he wasn't there, but maybe a third of the plays. Hopefully, with a good week of practice, we can get him back out there. 2, who saw the biggest decrease in snaps? Desmond King. Why in the world would we run Ty Smith out there, and why would we be getting Desmond King off the field? Well, the reason is that Desmond King can't play outside, and Adoree Jackson is not ready to play outside, at least this past week. Desmond King had his lowest snap total since joining the team at 33, so he only played half of the snaps in a game. The reason being is that
Blake, let me ask you this: as far as Desmond King, we've talked about Adoree Jackson being kind of conserved for the playoffs. I mean, you think, hey, let's rotate Adoree in there and give Desmond a break because since the day he arrived, I mean, since that trade deadline pickup, he's been, I don't know if he's had 100% snaps or even more than 90 or whatever it would be, but I just feel like that might be. I think the Titans, coaching staff is consistently, not to derail us here. I just want to throw it out there for you. Do you think Vrabel's playing some chess over checkers by doing that with Desmond King?
I don't think so. And the reason why is when I looked at the personnel, the vast majority of the time, Adoree Jackson was covering the slot. He was not on the outside. He was not on the left. He was not on the right. He was on the slot because Adoree Jackson needs to knock off the rust and get his legs beneath him again. And Desmond King is not equipped to cover an outside receiver. So I think the downtick for Desmond King was 100% getting Adoree out there and getting Adoree comfortable as far as like making sure that Adoree is ready to go for the bigger matchups, i.e. the Packers, i.e. the playoffs. So in that aspect, yes. But that's why you saw personnel. I was scratching my head when I was seeing Ty Smith get burned on the outside. I'm like, why in the world is Ty Smith out there right now? Not even Ty Smith wants to be out there right now, clearly. But that's because Adoree Jackson was in the slot, and it's just those growing pains. And you can afford to do things like that against a team like the Lions, as opposed to a matchup coming up this weekend. So I would expect to see Adoree get an uptick in that. And then you get the personnel where ideally you get Adoree Jackson on one side, Malcolm Butler on the other, and then King back in that prime slot position. Right. And that's the best defense we can be fielding right now. And hopefully this will be the week that we finally get to see our true starting defense on the field.
What do you think, Mike, as far as a Packers perspective? Obviously, we talked about Derrick Henry. What do you think about the Packers offense lining up against the Titans defense that's not necessarily known for stopping the pass too well?
So I think this is going to be it's going to be an awesome game. I think this kind of pits both teams' strength against the other team's weakness. I think the Packers' strength is clearly their passing game. I mean, the Titans' passing game is good, but the Titans' strength is Derrick Henry. The Packers' weakness is their run defense. the Titans' defenses or weaknesses, their pass defense. Just quick on the Packers' offense. So, like I said, Rodgers is having the best season of his career, in my opinion. I think a huge key to their offense this year has been running the ball way better. Aaron Jones had a huge year last year, obviously, but a lot of that was out of the backfield, which he is very good as a catcher, which is huge in their offense. Both him and Jamal Williams are great out of the backfield. Jamal Williams actually is questionable with a thigh injury, so that does concern me a bit. But it's as good as Aaron Jones was last year. He averaged 67 rushing yards per game last year. He's averaging 80 rushing yards per game this year. So he's running the ball a lot better. He's fourth in the NFL in rushing. He's actually averaging more yards per carry than Derrick Henry is, 5.4. Only Nick Chubb has more in the league. Devontae Adams is unguardable. So I get you have Jackson back, and there's no one in the Titans secondary who's going to stop Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is going to have 7 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown regardless. Another huge factor that the Packers have done this year is really establish a tight end again. Growing up in New England, in Connecticut, I was forced to watch a lot of Patriots games, and I am a firm believer that a good tight end is pretty much the hardest position in the NFL to stop. Mm-hmm. That's something that I don't think the Titans use enough. I think Jonnu Smith is a freak.
Yeah,
really. I mean, they used him more last week, which for Titans fans I think is a good sign. I think they need to use Jonnu way more in their offense. But Big Bob Tunnion's been a huge breakout for the Packers. He's got 10 touchdowns this year. He only had 10 catches last year. So Tonyan coming as that second option to Devontae, plus now Allen Lazard missed a bunch of time with a core injury. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has missed time. So we're kind of getting our whole offense back, just as you guys are getting your defense back.
Yeah.
But again, I still don't think the Titans will be able to slow down Rodgers in that offense. A huge key, something you guys brought up too, is the Titans really struggle to get a pass rush. Only 3 teams in the NFL have been sacked more than the Packers, or less than the Packers. The Packers have a really good offensive line. They've been great all year. David Bakhtiari just got the highest paid tackle contract in NFL history. Mm-hmm. So the Packers are doing a really good job protecting Aaron Rodgers. Going up against the Titans pass rush, Rodgers is going to have all day to sit back there and just pick apart this Titans secondary. So from a Packers perspective, I think they'll have no problem moving the ball against the Titans. What makes me a little concerned is on defense. Granted, the Packers defense has been very good this year. I don't think they get enough credit for how good their defense is. There's that whole narrative of, the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver. That's all we heard is the Packers haven't taken a wide receiver since whoever. Yeah. The reason they haven't taken a wide receiver is because they keep taking secondary. They keep taking corners and safeties. So now you look, it's been 2-3 years. Jair Alexander is in my opinion, one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the league. 2018 first round pick. Darnell Savage, 2019 first round pick. Kevin King, 2017 second round pick. Josh Jackson, 2018 second round pick. So all these guys are first and second rounders from the last 3-4 years that are all kind of peaking at once, all hitting their stride. Mm-hmm. The Packers have an excellent pass rush. Darius Smith has 11.5 sacks this year, 4th in the NFL. They have Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. So they get a very good pass rush, and they have really good corners. I think their defense ranks 9th in the NFL against the pass. So they do a good job against the pass. Mm-hmm. Where I'm nervous, and this might be just a lifelong Packers fan, is I still have PTSD from the last 8 years watching Adrian Peterson run for 200 yards against the Packers twice a year. From watching, Colin Kaepernick used to torch us in the playoffs, and anytime we played the Niners, Kaepernick would run wild. Earlier this year, Dalvin Cook, 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Packers, their run defense has been better, and they let down the Panthers, but when they play those just big, just give you 30 carries a game, they get torched. And the one stat that made me nervous is looking up when I was doing my research for this, and I was like, that's not a good stat.
We all know where you're going, Mike. We all know where you're going.
The three most rushing yards the Packers have given up this season 173 to Minnesota, 158 to Tampa Bay, and 140 to Indianapolis. Those are the Packers' 3 losses this season, or the 3 games they gave up the most rushing yards. So this is when, again, we spent the whole beginning talking about how Tannehill doesn't get enough credit. If they give the ball to Derrick Henry 35 times, they will win this game, and that makes me nervous.
I love it, dude. This is great insight. Obviously, I do want to say hello to some of our viewers here. Obviously, Josh Medina coming in. This is something the Titans have been ridiculed about. They've been 10 yards off the ball. The Titans need to play press this game because Roger loves that quick wide receiver screen.
Vontae will eat them all day.
Yeah. Twin number 2 and saying, what up, peeps? Good to have some of you guys in here. Let us know what you think. But, Mike, yeah, I agree, man. I think it's something it's that chess match with obviously the Titans defense has their issues, and Rodgers probably will have plays where he's just sitting back there for 5-6 seconds, and it feels like a minute where he's just able to put it right where he wants it to be. And you mentioned the tight end. Blake has been preaching the gospel of the tight ends, terrible defensive tight end coverage, which points back to Kevin Byard. But I think it's going to be one of those games, to be honest, and we can maybe do some predictions as we close this episode out. But I just think this is going to be one of those games where it's a high-scoring game, and whichever defense steps up enough is going to be the difference maker. And like you said, Mike, if I'm betting right here, and we can kind of make our picks, I'm probably going to go Titans just because of the ability to, and especially the ace up the sleeve. And thank goodness he is back. I think Darrington Evans is going to play a big key in this game, just to be able to be that 1-2 punch with Henry being able to, like Mike said, if the volume is there for the carries, I believe the yards will come. And I'm not saying that, not every team in the NFL is going to have, like the Steelers were being, hyped so much of having such a great offense and such a great defense, which was true. Obviously, it's changed a bit since then, but my perspective is just thinking if whoever plays the most complete game is going to be the better team on Sunday night. 8:20 start. Very excited. Obviously, I wanted to throw out for all of our viewers here, if you're just joining us, Mike Ianniello is our host, one of our hosts, co-hosts with Ben Bobick for the Competition Problem. If you are into sports betting, if you need some help, advice, picks, and you want to make some money, subscribe today and get some help with that Competition Problem, because Ben and Mike have the same issue, and they know how to lead and how to stick you away from some good and bad and ugly picks. But guys, let's talk about this one for the Titans, Packers. How are you betting this game this week? Because I think I've said my piece, but I want to hear your take.
So first, one thing I just want to say to Blake, I know obviously you said on what you've heard on Twitter is that the Packers are going to smoke them. I think that might be just, Titans fans being negative by their nature. The line for this game actually opened -4.5. It's now down to -3.5. The Titans are getting 75% of the bets currently. So the wide majority of the betting public is on the Titans here. It's pushed the line down to 3. Again, I will not bet this game because I already get nervous enough. I have my entire happiness on the line. I don't need my money on the line. That being said, I would bet the Packers in this game for 2 reasons. One, the spread is 3, which indicates, I think we all can agree, it's going to be a close game. Mm-hmm. It's strength on strength. It's going to be a close game. The spread is 3. If it's a close game and it comes down to that key number of 3 of a field goal, Mason Crosby is 20 for 20 this season and one of the best kickers in the last 10 years. Steven Gostkowski is 7 of 26, which is 69%, which in this case is not nice. So in a close game that's projected to be around a field goal, you're going to want to back the team who can make a field goal. Mm-hmm. Rodgers in his career is 117 and 84 against the spread. So Rodgers has covered at 58% of the time. That number goes up to 63% at home. At home, Rodgers has covered the spread. He's 57 and 33, and has covered the spread 63% of the time. And they're usually favorites at home. So the Packers, they always play better at home. What fans or not, you're still going to get, like we said, the cold Lambeau Field. So I would bet the Packers. I would definitely bet the over. The over is 56. Like I said, I think Rodgers picks apart the defense all day. I think Derrick Henry will get his. I think if you wanted to get into props, I tried to look them up. They're not out. I would take I would take Devontae's prop, probably. Devontae has scored a touchdown almost every game this year, 9 of 11 games. I would probably take Derrick Henry's rushing total. If it's anything under like 110, I would bet the over for Derrick Henry. If you wanted a high payout, Derrick Henry to score 2 touchdowns probably isn't bad. I don't think he'll hit the 160s there. I'll be shocked if he gets that high, but I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry has like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think the over 56, it's a big number. It'll be a sweat. But I like the over. I like the Packers -3. Now, if you like the Titans, if you are convinced you want to bet the Titans, and that now that you're getting 3 instead of the +4.5, so you lose the value of it. If they win by a field goal, you only get the push. Mm-hmm. If you want to bet the Titans, I would wait and bet the Titans live during the game. The Packers have scored on their first drive in 11 of their 14 games this season. So if the Packers march down the field, no problem. Like Blake said, they go through spells where they just do nothing. But then they go through spells where they score like it's nothing. Yeah. Which they've done on the first drive pretty much every game. So they did against the Panthers. So the Packers will march down the field early and they'll score a touchdown. And that +3 for the Titans will probably grow to plus 5.5, maybe even +6. The other thing too is if you want to wait even longer, the Packers have the best offense in the first half in the NFL. They're first in first half points in the league. They're 11th in second half points. The Titans are 7th in the first half in points and 5th in the second half. So you have the Titans tend to play a little better, if not just as good, in the second half as the first half, where the Packers tend to fall off in the second half. Again, you saw it against the Panthers. They went up a ton, and they really didn't do anything in the second half. So if you like the Titans, I would not bet +3. I would wait. The Packers probably get up a touchdown or 2. Then you bet the Titans. Then they don't really need to cover. Or win. They just need to come back and make close in the end. You get the win. So if you're going to do the Titans, I would wait on it. I like the over. I like the Packers at -3.
Interesting. You're kind of making me more confident in the Titans as we speak because, I mean, it is, I think, so close that 3-point spread will be, that's the big kicker to me as well. Not to be, no pun intended with Stephen Gostkowski being that guy, I mean, it's I don't know if it's the ghost of Christmas past, but man, I think this one is going to be similar to how the Steelers game was for the Titans, a high score, and it's going to come down to special teams. And I know the Titans recently, obviously, Khalif Raymond was out last week. Cam Batson was returning some kicks. Darrington Evans was, returning some punts. We'll see there. But Blake, what are you thinking, man? How are you betting this game this weekend?
I'm staying away from the money line. It's just too close. Yes, I think it's going to be close. I mean, it could come down to a field goal, but to be fair, I've been very hard on Gostkowski this whole year. 7 out of his 8 misses were on or before November the 1st. The last 2 months, he's been solid. 1 miss since November the 1st. If it comes down late, if there's a chance to redeem himself, I think that this will be a perfect opportunity at Lambeau. If I'm going to bet anything, I'm with you. I love the phrase you guys used on the last podcast, the hedge your happiness. I've stolen that. And I have used it so many times since the podcast with you guys. I generally don't like to bet games where my teams are involved. If I'm going to bet anything in this game, I could see the over. I would definitely bet the over if anything. But again, I'm probably going to stay away from it as a whole. But if I had to pick one thing, I would say bet the over.
The Titans. Oh, I just pulled it up. This season so far, the over in Titans games is 10-3-1. So you have a good offense and a bad defense. A lot of points seem to be scored. So, and the Packers are 7-7. They're about even. But again, Titans 10-3-1. And I think this is a matchup the Packers can definitely exploit. And I think it's also a good matchup for the Titans as well. So, the over is probably a good one. Like you said, if you want to get the props, the Derrick Henry prop, Devontae Adams props are pretty much always safe.
I'm pretty interested, man. I like I said, my confidence is there. I think for both teams, if Packers fans or Titans fans or not, this is going to be a damn good game. It's going to be one that's got a lot riding on it. Obviously, I don't think the NFC North is as competitive right now, or as the Packers situation is not as kind of nail biting as the Titans could be, as far as them potentially slipping off. And if the Colts slide in there, it'll be. I hope it's fun to watch. I'll say that as a Titans fan, but also it's just going to be some good football. Any last thoughts as we close this episode out, guys?
We're gonna do score predictions.
Yes. I'm sorry.
We have a guest on the show.
Let's go. All right, Mike. You start us off, and I'll end this. We'll go right to left.
Well, I gotta do the math for a second. Make sure I'm not giving you a score that wouldn't hit the over. I'll go Green Bay 35-31. But I will say I'm a very optimistic Packers fan. Like, Rodgers is the best quarterback of all time. They're going to beat everyone by 100. For Titans fans, this is definitely the most nervous I've been for a game all year, maybe except the Saints game. Just because, again, I'm so used to that power running back just running all over us all game long with Adrian Peterson, Dalvin Cook. So I'm nervous, but I'll go 35-31 Packers in a really good game.
Like, what you got, man?
This is like my Lee Corso moment. Are we going to put Zoom people all around us where they wait to see what we're going to say? No, I think it's going to be a spectacular game. As I alluded to earlier, Rodgers is having an amazing year. Tannehill is having an amazing year. Both running backs, a lot of these factors cancel each other out. And yes, we've had issues on special teams and stuff like that, but I can see it coming down to one factor. And if we learned anything from last year, is it got colder and as it got later in the year,
the king.
It's the king. I am not one to call upsets, but I just got a feeling, man. I am gonna call 27-24 Titans.
That is kind of eerie because I'll give my score prediction, but we're not that far off. I will say when it does get cold and you're on Hoth, you know who you want to bring. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. No, I think it's going to be. I think we've had a really good conversation. Obviously, if those who have been able to watch with us, hope you've enjoyed it. But obviously, our podcast listeners, and even if you listen after the fact on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, or wherever. Going to be a good game. I think it's going to be like a 30-27 type game, and it's going to come down to that kicking game. I do think it'll be something that I'm interested to see who is going to be that guy for both teams that's going to step it up. But Mike, you said you have one last question here, man. Hit us with your question. So
this is one of my hot takes that I've tweeted this multiple times over the last couple of years. And now I'm finally in front. This is my number one NFL take, and I'm finally in front of Titans fans. So I want to ask you guys. We talked about obviously how good Tannehill's been. We talked about Mariota. My number one take is if Jake Locker stayed healthy, he'd be a phenomenal quarterback and one of the best in the NFL. I was so high on Jake Locker. He would show these little. I'm like, this kid's sick, and then he just couldn't stay healthy. So that's always one of my biggest takes. Or if Jake Locker stayed healthy, he'd still be the Titans quarterback, and they would be awesome. Thoughts?
I'm going to go first. I think Blake's
Blake does not agree.
Here's the thing. I've said this on record several times. Jake Locker is a prime example. Marcus Mariota as well. Prime example of why I want the NFL to bring on my fantasy of a sports thought of the NFL draft lottery, where these awesome quarterbacks are not going to these trash teams and just get absolutely brutalized. I hope Trevor Lawrence sits at home and does not become a New York Jet, or if it's a Jacksonville Jaguar, I hope he has the opportunity to select where he wants to go. Locker, though, here's the interesting thing about him, man. I mean, was he? And here's the thing, it's the same thing for Vols fans. We've had those head coaches that we've wanted, and we finally got them. I legitimately prayed, God, please give us Vince Young after he won the Rose Bowl against USC. It's like, God, please. And it happened, but obviously it was a year, and it was terrible after that. But all that to say, I don't know if some people say Jake Locker quit. Obviously, there's a story there where he had, something happened with Matt Hasselbeck kind of leading him to Jesus and changing his life. And it's like, look, do you want an excuse? And that's why I think a lot of Titans fans might have a bad taste about Jake Locker. But no, I have such bad memories of Jake Locker where it's just like, no, such bad memories, dude.
You guys watch him every play, but every now and again I would see someone like, oh, that was pretty impressive. And then that's always my one thing.
So I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit. I was on the road on the way back from Birmingham visiting family when the NFL draft was going on, and that pick happened out of nowhere. And I nearly drove off the interstate. I'm not even exaggerating. I hit the shoulder pretty solidly.
He's good at Washington.
I mean, geez, he's West Coast wannabe conferences. Geez, come on. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to pull back the curtain on. I nearly drove off the road because I couldn't believe what I just heard. Second of all, I looked at those same stats you looked at, and I bought into the hype. And I have a cat who's named Jake. And the reason he is named Jake is exactly why you think he is named Jake. Now, granted, I let him keep the name, but that's pretty much the only Jake in my life now. But I think his stat line in the NFL was somewhere around 27 touchdowns versus 22 interceptions.
Not great.
Across 4 seasons. And I know that there was injuries, and I know that there was factors, and I know that there was all these other things, but 27 versus 22, I mean, maybe in another alternate timeline somewhere, maybe he works out. I don't buy into the theory that it was just the injuries, though.
There's a movie in production called The Titans, Spider-Verse. Like there was the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There's somewhere out there in the universe of Titans quarterbacks where Jake Locker has won 5 championships and he's been MVP. No, but I mean,
it's in the same timeline as the Rams corner missing that shoestring tackle and it not coming up 1 yard short.
Oh yeah. We won't close it out on that one. Thanks a lot, Blake. COVID.
Dang it.
No, but Mike, it's been very good to have you on, sir. Obviously, I want to make sure everyone knows you can listen to Mike and Ben Bobick every single week on The Competition Problem. If you're into sports betting, obviously check him out. As you can see on the handle here, it is at Ianniello21. 2 N's, 2 L's, if that's correct, Mike. I feel like I'm still learning how to say your name every time I see it. It is good to have you, man. And I want to close it out with what's been promo for them. Sorry, I'm saying what? Say what now? I think I might have lost connection. Blake, can you hear him?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we'll close it out, folks. But I wanted to leave you with our Competition Problem trailer. Be sure to check them out. And again, Blake, good to see you, buddy. I'll see you Sunday night.
Tighten up.
And then Mike, have a good one, man. Don't go Packers.
You two guys think
no pack, no.
Yeah. All right,
go
buddy.
Pack, go.
Y'all have a great night, guys.
The thought has occurred that you aren't really gambling with money. You're gambling with your reputation. Gambling with your good name.
What would they consider my good name? The purest of all pure? Person that doesn't make mistakes?
Think you have a gambling problem at all?
No. Because I can stop gambling. I have a competition problem.
What's going on, everybody? This is Trey Wynn with Chat 10 Sports, and I'm very excited to bring you The Competition Problem with Ben Bobick and Mike Ianniello. And folks, it is a lot of fun to work with these guys. I'm excited to bring you some good content for the sports betting crowd. And in case you have a competition problem as well, go ahead and subscribe to the feed.